Okay, one more gradient technique I'm going to show you, our last one of the day, is using gradients as a shadow or shading, creating shading with gradients. So once again, I'm going to go on to my, my main design and choose a couple shapes that I want to use. I'm going to use these two middle shapes. So I'm going to copy them, Command C. I'm going to lock down that, go into my gradation layer, and Command F, so they sit right in front. And I'm going to close that guy down. I'm going to take off these lines. So, and all of these, so we can just focus on these two shapes. So these are the shapes that I'm going to work on a gradation for. And actually, I'm going to keep these lines. So I have these lines already on here, but I want to add a shading basically on here to kind of give some depth to my body. So there's a couple ways to do this. I'm going to actually make two copies of this. I'm going to do one more layer. Call this one shading. Lock that. Command F that. Okay. And I'm going to take out the fill. And take out the line. So this is just an invisible shape. So a couple things. I want to do a shade element on this. And so I want to take on my gradient, I want to take I'm going to use, oops, I'm going to use the fill. Just select the gradient. I'm going to change out these colors. I'm going to go to my swatches and I want to grab the color. I just added a color. So if it does this to you, if you add the color, you don't want it to, you can just pull a color off. So I just pulled that other color off and I'm actually going to pull this color off or make this color none. So I want it, oops, come on. I want it to be none.
I think that you have to change the opacity to 0. You can't make it none.
Okay, that's what thank you. I was like, why isn't it making it none? All right, so you're right. I need to make it 0. I want it to be 0. I'm going to make the color. Oops. I'm actually changing this. I'm going to make the color, this color, even though it's at 0 opacity, I'm going to make it there. I am going to go on. I'm going to do one at a time. Go on here, and I'm going to edit the gradient because I just want my yellow. It's because it's going to, you'll see in the color behind it because it's a translucent layer on top. You want to just adjust the edges. I want to have just the shade or like a highlight happening on the edge. Oops. So I'm just doing a slight edge. Okay, I'm going to do this one the same way. I'm going to edit the gradient. And want the gradient that way, 180 degrees. And then I want to adjust it so that my gradient is, again, just on that middle section. I don't want it going everywhere. Okay, and so just to remind you, these are its own layer. And there's the layer of the color behind it. So that's just one of the ways to shade from one color to nothing with the color of whatever it is below it. So let's take a look at that. with the design. Okay, so that's one way of doing like a shading type grading. And that's what it was like before. Without it, that's with it. So it's very like a subtle change. And it's just going from one color to nothing. And I used a lighter color. I wanted it to be like glowing. You can also use a darker color if you want it to feel like it's in shade, shadow. Okay, and so that's the end of today's tutorial on using the blend tool to make line patterns, to use shading and using gradations, and exploring on how we add so much more depth. So now if we look back at this design I've started, the top part of the design is where I've been adding all my detail. And the bottom is where I started, where it was just solid shape, solid colors. And so just this idea of like how much more depth we can add to our designs by adding some of these techniques to bring more elements to our designs.